Governors got together and said, look, let's play for a hog. Let's play for a pig.
Ben and Eric gather at their laptops. One's a Gopher, one's a Hawkeye. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pot of Rosedale, a bronze pig full of hot takes. Big Ten Championship week. Go Hawks. I'm Ben, Hawkeye fan. Here with Eric, Gopher fan. Eric, before we talk Hawk, exciting news for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They're going to a bowl game. How you feeling about that?
It's depressing and a bummer. It really bums me out that this is how the Gophers backdoor their way into a bowl game. So I'm just reading an article that talks about how Hawaii beating Colorado State with a last-second 52-yard field goal meant that there were only 81 teams that had 6 wins. And so there's one 5-win team that gets in, and it's the team with the highest academic progress rating, which happened to be the Gophers.
You're not proud of your Gophers for being a bunch of nerds who like to study? Or does that embarrass you?
I mean, it's. I guess it's a nice sort of tip to the hat of PJ that he's got his players, I guess, doing well academically. But to be the one 5-win team that gets a bowl game is dark. Like, do you decline? I suppose you have to go, but
PJ Fleck probably has an incentive in his contract for bowl games that he gets to meet. You know, like, does he get a bonus for going to a bowl game, even at 5 and 7?
Probably, yeah.
Like he's going to turn down an extra $100K or whatever he gets.
But to pretend like this is some accomplishment is sad. It bums me out. And then, you mentioned before we started recording, there's also all the goddamn quarterbacks on this team are leaving. Kaliak Manis is entering the portal. The other backup DeVito guy is entering the portal. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback next year.
Cole Kramer. Yeah, next year's a mystery. That drama. Can we talk that drama a little bit? Do you think PJ came in and said, "Hey, Ethan, so proud of the work you've done here, buddy. You've done a great job, but we are going to look at bringing some guys in. We want to have a competition." Do you think it was that kind of conversation?
No, I think Kaliak Manis said, "Your offense sucks.
Okay,
I'm leaving. Like, I can't." And I don't think, I'm not saying he's justified in that because he sucked too, but I think it was more of I have no chance to succeed here because of the way you call plays.
He didn't think he had a chance to get better as a player, and so he did. Right. So the Gophers offering that guy from, I think, New Hampshire was the result of PJ's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't be surprised if it took him by surprise.
Okay.
I wouldn't be shocked by that.
So it was that was what you think caused it. Okay. So let's say Ethan finds a new.
But I mean, the other possibility is PJ rubs him the wrong way, just like we've learned he does many people, and he's just I can't play with this guy anymore.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, in general, you got to assume PJ gets his guys, but every once in a while, there's probably somebody who's like, "Whoa, I thought this was just an act," but you're like this all the time. I can't take this, man.
Before the season started, when we talked to Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune, we talked about how there was this story that came out that there were ex-players complaining about PJ Fleck as a coach and some allegations that he bullied players and had some rating system, and if you had it, you could break the rules, and if you were below it, you couldn't. And lo and behold, they have a shitty season. I don't know, maybe those things are related. It's hard to say, but if there's unrest and now this quarterback who was supposed to be your future leaves, it's not a good sign for the program.
No, and I don't
know what to think.
Well, we both thought it was the game the Gophers would win. They definitely needed to win. And Wisconsin kind of just whooped the Gophers. It wasn't really even that close. It feels like they just severely outplayed.
Close. The first half was close, and then the second half they just kind of blew it open. Yeah.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, I guess if that's a moral victory for you, like, hey, they kept it close.
No, it's not a moral victory. They got their ass kicked. You're right.
Okay.
It's not a moral victory.
It was like it wasn't all that close in a game they needed to have. It's brutal. I mean, you can go to you can go to Twitter, you can go to a number of different places to find some really dark thoughts for the Gophers.
You're enjoying this, and I really hate that. You don't want to talk about your team that's about to play for the Big Ten Championship. You don't want to talk about Kirk Ferentz. You don't talk about any of this because you're loving this. And
hey, you got Floyd.
Now you're pissing me off.
I hope Floyd was worth it. I hope Floyd was worth it. Was it worth it? But if you could go back in time and you change that call, which you think is the correct call, but let's say you go back in time and it's not overturned by the ref, Iowa beats Minnesota, keeps Floyd, but Minnesota gets an exchange beat, say, Northwestern, Purdue, and Wisconsin. Would you make that trade? Oh,
I don't
so you have to think about it.
I do have to think about it.
That's fascinating.
I think I'd rather have this team not end the season on 4 straight losses and look hapless and have their quarterback leave and the program look to be in complete disarray. I guess I would trade that for Floyd. I don't know if that's the trade we're making, but
it feels like the Gophers made a Faustian bargain.
You're just enjoying this too much, and I don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate it. Look, you can't see, if you're listening to this, you can't see the smile on Ben's face, but it's the biggest smile he's had all season long. He just can't wipe. It's like, why so serious over here? Heath Ledger, just smile.
It's just sports, man. It's just sports. Relax, Eric. It's just sports. You're taking it too seriously. You're losing perspective. Doesn't matter, man. It's just sports. Yeah, I think, like, hey, the Dark Lord Beelzebub approached PJ and said, would you like the Floyd finally? And PJ said, yes, I'll pay whatever it costs. And he said, fine. And they got Floyd, and then that was it. 4 straight losses.
No, well, they beat Michigan State the week after.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that. I'm so sorry.
Then it was 4 straight losses.
Got it. Okay, you got to beat Michigan State, and then you still got the bowl game.
Well, it's funny. I just want to mention before we can stop talking about the Gophers. Nobody wants to hear that listening to this podcast.
I think there are some Iowa fans who would are also smiling.
Enjoying it. Yes, that's true. But there's nothing more else to say. What is there? Do you want to dissect this more? How big of a bummer this is?
How hot is PJ's seat going into 2024 at this point?
I think very hot.
But is it a bowl game or bust? Like, let's say it goes 5-7 again. Well,
he's
real
gone.
bowl bust. Okay. So he's got to win at least 6 games.
If he doesn't win 6 games, I think he's fired.
Because there's a lot of smoke for PJ. I mean, people are not. There's no patience for this guy. And now it looks like it's just a fire sale with everybody getting out. There was a wide receiver recruit that decided to decommit. I just looked like there was just all sorts of stuff going on with the Gophers.
And that's the thing, like with college football, when you start getting this sort of reputation or the team starts falling apart, there's really no way out of the spiral. Like, winning games works, but when you're not winning games, there's really no way to improve it from here except to get a new coach. And it's sad because he's been here, the longest, I think, since Glenn Mason. He said the longest tenure, but it's not going to get any better. Just status quo. It's not going to get better. So,
well, this is what hurts. It hurts the Gophers, and it potentially hurts Iowa. It hasn't yet badly. It has on the offensive side. Almost every wide receiver that's worth a damn has transferred out of Iowa in the last couple of years. We'll see what happens in the offseason. But Iowa, and probably to a similar extent, and the Gophers, this concept of being a developmental program is a lot dicier. Because in order for that to work, you're going to need guys to buy in and bide their time, get better, and develop from a guy who's maybe not great into one that is great. Now, let's say Ethan Kaliak-Manis continues to develop and get better. And he could have done that in Minnesota. Well, instead, because of whatever reason, he's going to transfer for somewhere else where he can have more immediate results, or any guy that's a backup that justifiably wants playoff time or play game time can ditch. I think it's tough. I mean, the Gophers aren't probably going to bring in a ton of talent on the transfer portal or on the recruiting basis. Neither does Iowa, but Iowa.
Well, you would think someone with PJ's sensibility, his style and flair and love for the theatrics would work on the recruiting trail, or would work for.
They require a very specific kind of personality. Just like Kirk is able to kind of get his guys, and they're not the same guys that PJ gets. He finds the quote-unquote blue-collar guys, the underappreciated dudes, and they work their way up, and they feel disrespected. And despite the fact that Iowa's offense has been just attacked relentlessly, not a single defensive player who would justifiably be mad about how bad Iowa's offense is has said anything vaguely negative about the offense ever. No matter what, the defense is always like, we could have done something better. And he finds these guys, and it works. But PJ's got such a specific personality. Well, there are just not a lot of people who can tolerate that level of energy and whatever. I don't even know how to describe it. Salesman nonsense. It's draining to be around that. It exhausts me watching him talk for 2 minutes. I'm like, ugh, I can't take this guy anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
well, what I was going to say is
Sorry.
I think what we're learning about him is that, well, one, he should have taken a better job after the 9-win season here.
2019 was the peak. That's probably where he was the most
He should have
marketable.
left. He should have left because then he probably could have had any one of those big jobs. He should have went for a bigger job. But I think what we're learning with him is we're at this point in his tenure here where he's never really been. I'm just going back and looking at how long he's stayed with each program. So he was with Northern Illinois head coaching. So he's with Northern Illinois for a year, Rutgers wide receiver coach. So he's with Western Michigan just for 3 seasons and then left to Minnesota. So basically that was his only real time. And all of a sudden he brought Western Michigan after 3 years, like this really great record. Weren't they in the Rose Bowl or something like that? Or
they made some big bowl game.
Big bowl game, yeah.
Yeah, they had a perfect regular season and they only lost to like Wisconsin.
Right. And then he came here. Game. And 3 years in here, he was like, oh, wow. 2017, 2018, and 2019, he's like, holy crap, like we got something here. And then it starts
hard, yeah.
Then it starts falling apart. And like I think maybe we're learning that whatever it is that he can do only works for a few years. And then it kind of runs its course. So
that's possible. It's a lot. There are a lot of coaches that do like the 3 or 4 year track. Like Matt Rule did that. He'd be like 3 years, but 3 years here, and then jump. Like that's where you can kind of do everything, get everybody installed, have a really great season, and say, look at what I did. But sustaining stuff is tough to do. It's tough to do. You're gonna have years where all those talented players you recruited are gonna just not be there, or injuries or whatever.
But see, that would be fine. Like I could have taken this season if it was like, hey, we just got a lot of young guys. We had all these guys through COVID and Tanner Morgan and all these Ibrahim, and now it's a young team. We're starting from scratch, and we're gonna get better. It's gonna be a rough year, but it doesn't have the feel of that. It has the feel of like scrapped together pieces from here and there, guys that don't seem like they're gonna be around, just sort of biding their time. And obviously now you got guys leaving. It has the feel of a like shipwreck, not a like building block to something better.
Well, right, and the transfer portal I think makes that worse. If transfer portal weren't what it was, a lot of those guys wouldn't be able to transfer, and so they'd be like, well, I gotta stay here and fight for playing time. I mean, like the example for Iowa was a guy, Jay Higgins, who's now a first team All Big Ten linebacker, but he had to spend basically his entire career being behind some really incredible linebackers, and he just couldn't get playing time. Like behind Jack Campbell, probably the best linebacker Kirk Ferentz has ever had in his 20-some years. And he really wanted to transfer, but he never did. And finally, after all the coaching, he got to play, he got to start. He's been incredible. He's the first team All Big Ten. He's phenomenal. Leads the Big Ten in tackles. He's great. Iowa's been able to keep a lot of those guys on the defense, not on the offensive side. I think the Gophers could do that, and that would be a perfectly reasonable approach if you're just, hey, we got to develop, we're going to have some lumps. But that's just not possible. Any guy that has gotten better, I saw the Gophers have a lineman that's transferring out that's played some, and maybe he's going to get bigger and better, right? You think about going from I don't know when the last time you've seen a high school football game. Have you seen one recently at all?
Not since I was in high school.
So I've got a brother-in-law who's a head coach at a high school, and guys on the offensive line in high school, they're big, but they're not gigantic. They look like normal humans who are just kind of big. But you have to get massive. You have to be so strong to be a really good offensive line. It takes years for most to develop and be that good. Yeah, there's some guys who come off the shelf ready to go, but the Gophers aren't getting those guys, neither is Iowa, with the occasional exception like Tristan Wirfs was an exception, but that just doesn't happen. Like the 5-star guy Iowa had last year, he got swooped by Alabama. It's just possible to keep. So I don't know. I think it's tough. And you're right that anytime it looks like the ship is sinking, or you're just like, man, I can't stand PJ, it's very easy to go elsewhere. And PJ's he's not ever going to say, hey, we got a young team, we're going to make some mistakes, but we're going to. That just doesn't seem his style. Like to admit defeat going into the season, I don't know. That seems too much on the front end.
I think, and not to belabor the point, but I think for me the biggest issue is just there's no identity on the field. There's an identity off the field with the row the boat and all that bullshit.
But it's meaningless
But it doesn't
Nothing.
help you when the whistle blows and you have to actually play football. Like, there's no offensive identity. Are they a passing team, running team? What is it? I don't have no idea. Defensively, I guess 2 years ago they were a pretty good defense, kind of stopped the run. But this year they got shredded by Northwestern, by any team they played. Iowa's the only team that didn't put up a ton of points, and Iowa didn't put up a ton of points against anybody.
Correct.
So, even like Mason, at least Mason had like, I'm going to have great running backs, and we're going to just crush you with a run. Now, that didn't always work, and he didn't have a ton of success, but at least it's a little bit of an identity. You know you're going to have good running backs and good offensive linemen.
Sure.
That's what I would love. Like, are you going to bring in wide receivers and just air it out? Okay, let's try that. PJ Fleck was a wide receiver. He played in the NFL or was on an NFL team for a minute. Like,
sure.
Coach up your wide receivers. Like, get a play caller who wants to throw the ball. It's just some kind of identity. That's the thing that bugs me. If Iowa's got an identity, it's boring as shit, and it's punting, and it's special teams, and bringing in a kicker who's never kicked before to win a game. Like, play good defense, rely on your amazing defensive coordinator, and win games that way. It's an identity. There's something you can identify with it. And, every Saturday, those are the teams that are going to show up, and in the second half, they're going to wear teams down, and towards the end of the season, they're going to wear teams down, and they're going to peak at the end of the year, and here you go. Big Ten championship game.
Or you just wait for other teams to shit the bed. You wait for Nebraska to throw an interception right to a defender, and then set yourself up.
I did want to add, before I forget to mention, I was watching PTI today. And
oh wow, okay.
Tony Kornheiser was saying he was just complaining so much about the Monday Night Football game, the Vikings and the Bears, about how it was just totally boring football. Bears won a game without scoring a touchdown. It was 13-10 or something like that. And he was like, it's basically, he said it's as if Kirk Ferentz is coaching these teams. He said it like that. And then and then they were talking about, like, he went through a bunch of NFL teams. He went through like 5 or 6 different teams that have terrible quarterbacks. And he said again, he's like, it's the Kirk Ferentz football league where all these teams punt and the quarterbacks are terrible.
I'm telling you, Iowa has become the
he's catching strays. He's catching strays on PTI.
It's been going on for a long time. Anytime. It's with the U.S. men's soccer team. What was it last year? I think, where they just couldn't score goals. They had a really good defense, but they couldn't score. Iowa and Kirk Ferentz have just become synonymous with just excruciatingly good defense and excruciatingly bad offense. That's just become the nomenclature. It's like that. That's what Iowa's known for. I guess they do have an identity. It's boring. It's painful. It's god-awful offense. But you're going to play really annoying defense and make the other team look as bad as you, which has been Iowa's strategy and has worked in every game that.
Hey, you're playing for the Big Ten Championship on Saturday.
That's true. 23-point underdogs currently. The line keeps shifting more and more to Michigan because I just don't think anybody wants to take Iowa, including me. It looks bleak, Eric. I have no hope. But should I have hope? What is the hope? What's the case for Iowa having a chance to win this football game?
I think you grind them to the point where they make a mistake. McCarthy has had games where he hasn't looked great. He's thrown some bad passes, and they've had some low-scoring, close games. Now, Michigan does have a good defense. We saw them on Saturday grind Ohio State down and beat them pretty soundly. So,
Do you think Ohio State's willing to lend Iowa Marvin Harrison Jr. by chance? What do you think? Do you think they hate Michigan enough to risk him?
Do you think he might get a little frustrated trying to catch passes from Deacon Hill?
Maybe, but I mean, Iowa might only need to catch 3 passes for like 70 yards. That might be enough. Who knows? But I just think Ohio State might possibly hate Michigan enough. Like, hey, should we let her start out? I mean, wouldn't it be worth it if I was able to upset Michigan? Fine. I mean, lend us your entire offense, other team, any team, your offensive coordinator. That's fine. We'll just put Iowa jerseys on you for one game, just 1 game hires. You need Michigan to make a lot of mistakes. It feels like Michigan has to have at least 4 turnovers minimum.
And you need a special teams kind of
that's
thing.
like off the table because
a blocked punt or
it'd have to be a block kick because Cooper DeJean's not playing, and okay, I don't know how to say his last name. Wejden, I think, is how it's pronounced. Love the guy, but he is no Cooper DeJean. So the idea of like a punt return is unlikely. They haven't been close to breaking out a kickoff return. So it's a bunch of fluky scores, and Iowa basically has to keep Michigan under like 2 touchdowns.
Right.
17-point field. Like we saw what happens when Iowa goes against an elite defense. The Gophers are bad defense. Gophers are perhaps the worst defense in the Big Ten. Gophers give up 6 yards of play. Iowa gives up 4 yards. I mean, that's his gap. They give the most yards of play. The Gophers were really bad, and Iowa couldn't move the ball on them. Penn State, an elite defense. Iowa was one time kind of in the neighborhood of scoring, and then that was it. And it was awful. It was just like these games where the second Michigan goes ahead, it's going to feel awful. That's what happened 2 years ago. It's like, oh, Michigan scored a touchdown. Oh, it feels hopeless. Oh, now they scored 2 touchdowns. What's going to happen? Deacon Hill's going to throw the ball 35 times and throw 3 interceptions, and it's just going to spiral at that point. So it's going to be, I don't know. I want it to happen. It'd be exciting. I feel like this is, given a lot of the anti-Michigan sentiment, this is as much support as Iowa's likely ever to get in this game. It would be very, very funny to see Iowa defeat Michigan. Well, it would be the Big Ten West only victory in the Big Ten championship game ever.
It would be hilarious. And then it would also, so this is another thing they were talking about on PTI, is if Iowa wins, it essentially removes a Big Ten team from the playoff, right? Like, would be the first time ever, right? No Big Ten teams in there.
Is there
or
a
do you
scenario?
Disagree?
Oh, I don't know enough about the scenarios to know if there's a possibility of enough teams losing for like Ohio State to get in. You know what I mean? Like,
because I think Ohio State is like 8th now, 7th or 8th, something like that. 7th or 8th. They dropped a few spots.
I mean,
there's,
sure.
Like Oregon is ahead, Oregon's ahead of them, and they have 1 loss. I suppose they could lose to Washington.
Right. That would help.
There is a scenario like if Alabama beats Georgia, if Oregon beats Washington, that there's just a whole crap ton of 1-loss teams that maybe then Michigan would
have one of the best losses.
Would Ohio State jump Michigan then?
Potentially, that's what I mean. Probably not, but maybe. It's just going to depend. A loss to Iowa is going to be viewed as a bad loss.
No way Iowa could sniff it. There's just no chance a 2-loss team. I mean,
no.
The Big Ten champs. That would be such a bummer.
You can't make it. There's no way.
You know what? As a warring Gopher fan, the fact that the loss to them could potentially be the reason they wouldn't be in the college football playoff.
I mean, it is. If Iowa had beaten the Gophers, if Iowa
and their
was
only
11-1
loss is
right now,
Penn State,
and they have a victory over Michigan, then you could make a case.
They should probably be in it. Yeah,
it'd be close. They might not, but they'd be knocking on the door.
As we talked last week, they'd be a top 10 team right now.
Yeah, they'd be a top 10 overall. I would guess
they could have an argument that they should be ahead of Ohio State right now. If they had only had the 1 loss.
Sure.
To Penn State a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, almost.
So it's not a good argument, but it's one you could make. I mean, when you look at Penn State's probably not as good as Michigan, and the loss was worse because Iowa was clobbered 31-0. I mean, it wasn't even a close game. That's the counter argument. It's not like Iowa fought valiantly and almost beat Penn State. It was a game that was over.
Right, but usually the way those things
in the third quarter,
way those things work is like over time.
Better to lose early than lose late. Yeah, that's true.
Right.
No, that's true. But the problem is just how bad Iowa lost, which is
it's a moot point because it didn't happen. But if it is the fact, if Iowa does win on Saturday and that's what keeps them out is that they lost to the Gophers, I can't
that's
say.
Fine. I won't be upset. Iowa has not played well enough to go to the college football playoff. This wouldn't upset me. I would be so excited for Iowa to win a Big Ten championship. It wouldn't matter. I wouldn't care. Basically, anything that happens after that is whatever. I mean, winning the Big Ten title is huge.
the 1 year the Big Ten champion doesn't play in the playoffs would be a bummer. And then
I don't
also,
care. Why should I care about other Big Ten teams? I don't care.
If there were 8 teams, you'd be in for sure. So you might even be in with 2 losses, you know? Or,
if Iowa beats Michigan and there's 12 teams, then sure, Iowa's in the top 12. They're not. It's fine. It'd be amazing. If Iowa beats Michigan, I look forward to like the 30 for 30 in 10 years or whatever on the team after Kirk's retired. They just talk about the worst conference ever.
How
whatever
did
the
this
title.
Team ever win the Big Ten?
That's what exactly what it would be like.
30 for 30.
Correct. Like this is the worst division in college football history, and it'll just talk about these teams are terrible, and it'll list all the QBRs. How did this team, which had a guy who completed like 45% of his passes, win the Big Ten? I mean, it'd be great. It'll be fun. Of course I've got to revel in the Gopher misery a little bit because I can't be. I'm too much of a realist to be like, it's other than a Michigan meltdown. There's not really any other path I see to Iowa winning. I mean, it's just Iowa is not going to be capable of playing offense even surprisingly well enough to win any kind of shootout whatsoever. They've got to just completely eradicate Michigan's offense. So I just got to look at the Gophers who. I mean, I had to stomach PJ Fleck holding Floyd the first time ever. So yeah, I've got to enjoy a little bit of misery. But it's been a long season. We finally reached the end. Over unders. Should we revisit them one last time, Eric?
Yeah, let's go through them. I know you want to pat yourself on the back. So.
No, it's not as big of a blowout as you think. It's actually very, very close. So let's start by congratulating Eric Michael Lane. You didn't understand the Wisconsin hype. You said, "What's the deal with this Badger hype? I just don't get it.
What's the
Why
deal with
it? Why are they supposed to be good?
The air raid offense.
Air raid, more like anti-points raid. Oh, sure, even better. Wisconsin obviously struggled mightily. They did finish with the victory of the Gophers at 7-5, well under the under. So that's for you as well. So congratulations. Northwestern.
Did you have the over on Wisconsin?
Oh, yeah, I had the over. That's a point for you. People listen to you. They made money on a Wisconsin under bet. Northwestern obliterated the over. It was 3 games. They beat that by 250. 7 games.
Second best team in the Big Ten West.
Yes, exactly. That Gopher loss. I mean, that Gopher win wasn't so bad in hindsight. An exciting game against Illinois to close out the season. That's another one you're right about. And the other one, I'm really sad you're right about it, is that I got wrong, was Ohio State. I picked the under somewhat for fun, but Ohio State, it was 10.5 games. They had already clinched it by the time they played Michigan. They weren't really that close to even hitting it, other than the Notre Dame game was the one they would have had to lose for the under to hit, and it didn't. So congratulations to you. Illinois, you thought they would be good. You bought the Illinois hype. I did not. Illinois hit the under. They're 5-7. Not bowling. Their grade's not good enough to supplant the Gophers. Eric, you're also a Hawkeye hater. 8.5 for the Hawkeyes. I picked the over. You didn't listen to John Steppe. You ignored him. You said the Hawkeyes aren't going to win 9 games. Balderdash, good sir. Net over hit. Penn State, you remember what you picked for Penn State?
Did I go under for them?
You did. And after they annihilated Michigan State, they just hit the over for their 10th win. And they also didn't really come close to losing to anybody that wasn't Ohio State or Michigan. The tiebreaker is Purdue. Do you remember what you put for Purdue?
I probably had over on them. Yeah, I was big on Purdue.
And it's the under hit. I didn't miss by a lot. They were 4-8, but the over-under was 5 games for Purdue, and the under hit. Other than that, we agreed on everything else. We were both right about the Gophers. We were both right about Nebraska. We were both right about Michigan. Both wrong about Rutgers. Rutgers hit the over. Both of us right about Maryland. I mean, if people listen to us, I think they did okay on the over-unders. Right about Indiana. We were right about Michigan State. We took the under, and Michigan State was really bad this year. especially losing their coach. So we did okay. Don't think if I missed anybody here.
So you got me by one game.
Correct. You were right on 3. We disagreed on 7 games. I got 4. You got 3. But overall, if somebody listened to either you or me, they made money. I think we were right more often than we were wrong as a collective. I mean, we both predicted the Gophers would only win 6 games. So, we had 6-6 really going in that conference. It just was slightly worse than that. And, of course, it feels worse when you lose 4 games. Just like Nebraska has been stuck at 5 wins for 4 straight weeks, and they keep losing in excruciating ways and miss out on another bowl game.
Yeah, the Gophers feel a lot like Nebraska. Like, where is Nebraska right now? Well,
imagine you didn't have the 9-win seasons, and you can maybe get there.
Well, they've also won national championships in recent times.
25 years ago,
at
this point.
I was alive then, so.
Yeah, you were hanging out in middle school or whatever, high school. But yeah, now they haven't even gone to a bowl game in like 8 years. What were you doing 8 years ago, Eric? What was your life like?
New dad?
Yeah. Real young.
Newish.
Pretty new, yeah.
I probably had just met you.
Yeah, maybe. Would have been around that time. It would have been fall of 2015. Around the last time. But I don't feel bad for Nebraska. Nebraska needs to suffer a lot longer before I'll start to feel bad for them. Really not going to ever forget we're evaluating where Iowa is as a program. And then firing both Leaney and then just being awful post that hire. All right, need you to do it, Eric. Don't just pick the Big Ten Championship game. Give me a final score. What's the final score? Iowa versus Michigan. The last Big Ten Championship game, at least in its current format.
I'll say 24-6, Michigan.
Whoa. Okay. So that's a cover for Iowa. But not a particularly close game. It's an excruciating. Michigan just pulverizes Iowa.
Yeah,
and then probably just runs the ball a bunch. The clock ends and
McCarthy throws like 12 passes or something like that.
Okay. Well, after your tongue lashing about my lack of optimism last week, I've been reconsidering my position. So here's how I think the game goes. I think it's Iowa 49, Michigan nothing.
49-0.
This is going to be like a remember the Titans situation. They're not going to gain a single yard of offense.
Nope.
After the first drive. It's going to get shut down. And they're going to be so ashamed that the university is going to just shut down the program. It's not going to be – they're just going to be like, you know what? We're done.
Well, should there be an asterisk? Like, is Iowa already the de facto Big Ten champions because of all the bullshit?
I saw something on Twitter which just seemed – it seemed like just somebody is like, I want engagement on X, where somebody said, rumor is that new data is coming to the NCAA or the Big Ten Conference, or coming to the Big Ten Conference from the NCAA about Michigan sign stealing. And while there's probably not going to be any action taken, if there is, they might rule Iowa the de facto Big Ten championships. It's like, okay.
It should. That would be hilarious.
That last bit was just speculation made of nonsense to just get Michigan fans angry.
That will never happen, but you could make the argument that the season is tainted.
You talk about a satisfying win. Oh, that would be just so fun.
They get drilled, and then, wait, hold on. We're getting a ruling in from the Big Ten commissioner.
Yeah, that would be gratifying. That would make me feel great. That's like that's worse than your bowl game scenario.
It's not all that dissimilar.
Well, at least yours is from like, okay, something you did that's meaningful. Like, okay, our players are high academic achievers. This would be just nothing. I would have done nothing to deserve it. It's just be somewhere else somebody made a ruling. It would be the least great Big Ten championship that's ever been. And somehow, despite losing top 2 tight ends, quarterback, their best defensive player, and winning 10 games, Kirk is not the coach of the year. That goes to David Braun or whatever his name is at Northwestern, which I can't really be mad about because none of us thought Northwestern would win. It was going to be a shock if they won 4 games and they won 7.
It should go to Phil Parker. That's who it should go to.
Well, he's technically not a head coach.
Well, he still should win the goddamn award because this season is 100% up because of him.
Well, as is every season. It's like we'll get to speculate on who Iowa's new offensive coordinator. It's going to be an in-staff hire, and it's going to be more of the same. But hey, I'd love to see Iowa with a decent offensive day. But all right, I don't have a real prediction. I can't be rational about it. My prediction is going to be something awful. I'll do 34-3 Michigan or something embarrassing, and basically a version of what happened 2 years ago. It wasn't close then. I don't think it'll be too close now. I'll be happy to be wrong. But yeah, there we have it. That's this will be our last podcast of the season. I don't think. Who knows? I don't think we'll reconvene next week. Maybe if Iowa wins, we'll have to do a quick one. I don't know if you're up for that, Eric. But if Iowa gets clobbered, I don't feel the need to come in and rehash a miserable game.
Thank you, everybody, loyal listeners, anybody that stuck with us all season and tuned in. We had some good numbers, and people listened, and we thank you for those of you that did.
Yeah,
we appreciate it. We will be back next year? ? Maybe.
I think so. This is always the worst time to ask when we've been doing it every week and needing a break. Let the dust settle. Let a break happen. Oh, but let's make this announcement. If you enjoy Eric and I's banter, we do have a movie podcast that has been on hiatus. Pot of Dreams. We basically just review whichever movies we feel like reviewing. We take turns picking. So if you like more of that, look for Pot of Dreams, iTunes, Spotify.
Stay on this channel or stream or whatever they call it.
Yeah,
You'll be able to access it.
Your subscriber, those episodes will start dropping in January. We are going to take a December hiatus here, barring a miraculous Big Ten win. Even if Eric doesn't join me, I will just record a pod and it'll just be me going yippee and then full stop. But thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you giving us your ears. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Woo!